Primaries, we really appreciate it. Jack Kane, he keeps trying to back off and we keep reeling him in. Thank you so much for being with us and filling in when we need us. Shelly's not here tonight, but a huge shout out to her as well. Again, we just plucked her in and she has done an amazing job. Thank you so much, Shelly. Hopefully you're watching us. And the one person, our behind the scenes guy, nobody sees him, but he makes it all possible. Angel, thank you, thank you, thank you. One day we are going to get a picture and we're all going to hold your picture up so everybody knows who you are. He does an amazing job. We couldn't do any of this without him. So
amen to that. Amen to that.
Yeah. Yes, yes. So tonight we have Tonya Millis. I did pronounce it right, correct, Tonya? Okay. Basically, we were going about her name. That's why she's Tonya for Congress. And she is in the 9th Congressional District, which includes 7 counties, Southern Indiana, kind of south. 17. What did I say? 7?
7, yeah.
17. She's in 17 different counties, and we're going to be getting some of her views and how she thinks about where cannabis is going and that kind of thing. This is our last cannabis conversations with the candidates before the primaries, which this is a test. Think about it. When is it? Tuesday, May 3rd. We need everybody out there voting next Tuesday, May 3rd. Nothing happens if you don't vote. So we need you to get out there. And actually there's early voting going on, at least up here in Fort Wayne area. I think it's everywhere, right?
Bloomington,
yeah. Brian's saying, yeah. Okay, so get out now, today, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, but you have to get out and vote. Go to our website, indiananormal.org, and you'll be able to see who we endorse and who we've had conversations with, but we need you to get out and vote. So Tonya, thank you for being here.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So tell us something about yourself. What's your background? Why did you want to run for office?
Okay, well, I'm a real estate broker. And the first time I ran for office in my life was 2020, running for Congress there, District 9. It had 14 counties then, now it has 17. And for a Libertarian, I did very well compared to the Libertarians all across the country. I had one of the better campaigns. So now that the incumbent's not running again, it's an open seat and I'm going for it. I've got some name recognition now, and this campaign's going to be much better than the last. And if you don't mind, I'm going to show, since we're talking about District 9 real quick, I'm going to show a map of my district. It's right here, this area right here, 17 counties in District 9, and it's a lot of ground for me to cover.
Hey, Tonya, Could you hold that a little closer to your camera? So any of our viewers out there, if you live in there, pay attention. Okay, go ahead, Tonya.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah, so, ooh. Yeah, so anyone who wants to learn more about me as we're talking and going through the show here this evening, they can go to my website after the show, TonyaForCongress.com. And yeah, but I'm looking forward to this evening and having a nice conversation. I did want to ask a question though. What happened to the taste tester at the Colorado Cannabis Festival? He got a pot belly. One more. One more. Okay. After a woman got high, why did she go out and plant Cheerios?
Why?
Because she thought they were donut seeds.
That's awesome. That's
You got a
awesome.
second career stand up.
Well, I might throw in a couple later, so I got a whole bunch of them here.
Right on. So Tonya, what led you to support re-legalization of cannabis?
Well, actually, since the 1980s, I think, I've been supporting the legalization of marijuana my whole adult life, really. I've always said that. Nothing's changed in my opinion on that regard. So I've never thought marijuana should be illegal to begin with. And I even had, it was 2020, I think I got it here. I was interviewed by the Indiana University newspaper, the Indiana Daily Student, and I actually found my exact quote from the last campaign. And my response then was, cannabis products and marijuana should be decriminalized for adults as they are victimless crimes. If elected to Congress, I will be in favor of passing the MORE Act or a similar bill. That was 2 years ago. But nothing's changed for me. I've always thought that marijuana should be legal and cannabis products should be easier for people to get access to.
That's wonderful. Jack?
So, yeah, so why is that legalization and decriminalization nationwide important to you? What do you think the impact should be or will be?
Well, if I can talk about the MORE Act at the federal level, in 2020, the MORE Act, when it was being written and going through the committees in Congress, I was telling people about it. I'm like, hey, they're putting a bill out there to legalize marijuana, and people are like, no, it'll never get to the House floor, and it'll never get there. I'm like, well, and then when they put it on the docket and it was going to be voted on, like, hey, it's going to be voted on, the MORE Act. No, it'll never pass. Like, well, I don't know. I'm kind of getting a good vibe about it. And then it passed. So I was like the first person, as I was watching it live, because I'm a junkie when it comes to watching C-SPAN in the House of Representatives, because that's what I'm into. So yeah, I was real excited about it. Of course, then Mitch McConnell over in the Senate, he wasn't even going to hear about it. It wasn't even going to go to the floor. It wasn't even going to be discussed in the Senate. Well, fast forward to 2022. It goes through the House again, gets passed again, and this time it's going to be heard on the Senate floor. So Chuck Schumer is the majority leader over on the Senate side now. So it sounds like they're going to be possibly bringing it to the floor in July before the August recess. So we're all going to be watching for that. The Senate is so evenly divided. So yeah, and that's not good. Our broken two-party system is got to go, and it's one of the reasons why I'm running as a libertarian, because our founding fathers did not want it to be like this. So many of our freedoms and liberties have been whittled away by what we call the duopoly, the monopoly of the two-party system. It wasn't meant to be like this. So hopefully that will change with this next election, and we can get more libertarians and independents in there. I tell people who don't understand how it works in the House of Representatives, there's 435 members. And for one side or the other to have a majority, they have to have 218. what if neither party got 218 because there were 5 or 6 or more libertarians that won the race across the country, to where maybe the Republicans or the Democrats had 215 or 216, but they didn't have that 218 because me and a handful of others got in there. And then we would be the voice for the people.
Thank you.
To know anyone that uses cannabis, no names, you don't have to give any names, but do you know anybody that happens to use cannabis? And if so, how do they behave? I mean, do they have normal reasoning skills, stuff like that? Because we need to really break this propagandist ideology that cannabis is this lazy person's drug, you know.
I am one of the most active people that I know. People complain because during the day I'm running circles around them, and Tonya, sit down, sit down, sit down. It's hard for me to sit down. Not because I can't, it's just because I have a lot of stuff to do. I've always been high energy. And sometimes in the evening, I will relax with a glass of wine or two. But to be honest with you, if marijuana was legal and I could go down to the corner store, I probably would be doing that. But it's not because I'm a dummy or stupid, like you said, it's this, or lazy, the lazy people's. No. And I know a lot of people who use it for recreational use as well as for pain management. Different people use it for different reasons, and I know I'm not giving anybody's names. And they're very active. They go to work every day, and they are productive and responsible. So I think more and more people are seeing that, which is why the majority of the people want marijuana legalized, because they can see for themselves that it's not a hindrance on your personal production, the way you live your life and get things done.
Yes, we really need to break the stigma. We need to break the stigma on it for sure.
Yeah, Tonya, why don't you give us your impression on why cannabis was made illegal?
Well, I go back to the 80s because, and I was kind of a fan of Ronald Reagan because he was such a good orator, and I was drawn into politics and getting involved that way, just personally voting and being a member of the, PTA and that sort of thing. Now, I wasn't running for office until just recently, but I was really paying attention. And I think it was 1984. It was called the CCCA, what was that? The Crime Control Act of 1984, I think. And the purpose of that was to, they made it more difficult for people who were producing marijuana, selling and processing, transferring marijuana. They made it more of a difficult federal crime. And then they also got into asset forfeiture, to where, and the purpose of it back then, the original purpose was to go after high crimes like the racketeering, the mafia, and that's what the original purpose was. But then the lawmakers allowed for the people who enforced the law to abuse the law. And then they started going for the low level, just your regular Joe, victimless crime. And they were going after everybody and taking people's personal property and just ruining people's lives. So I think the original, of course, you can go back to even like the 70s too, where they first started making marijuana illegal, but then it progressed to where they made it harder and harder, like the law I was talking about in the 80s. So, but with the MORE Act, that's reversing that. And I've always been about reversing rules and regulations and laws anyway. That's one of my platforms. If your listeners go to my website, TonyaForCongress.com, and see the issues that I care about, it's plain as day what I'm all about.
I need to insert a Neil rant right now because asset forfeitures is one of his huge triggers. So Neil, we're looking out for you. He has which everybody, I mean, we all should, of course. It's ridiculous because like you said, you get pulled over for a joint and they're going to take your car.
Exactly.
Really?
And what if
Yeah.
the family needs the car? You've got a wife and kids that got to go to school, and the car's been impounded because, maybe the dad or boyfriend had a joint. We've had her, recently in Bedford, someone fell asleep in his car, and it ended up, they brought the dogs, and all he had was residue, and they still arrested him. So it's so ridiculous. Yeah.
Right.
But
All right, Jack. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian, did you have a
I
follow
was
up?
going to say, when they first decriminalized it, it was way before the 70s and 80s, or made it criminal in the 30s, with Harry Anslinger, and a lot of it had to do with like racist propaganda, saying that it was causing people of color to rape white women, and it was during the Mexican War or whatever it was, something was going on there, and they really tried to demonize it there, and that's whenever, of course, Harry Anslinger owned a lot of land with woods and stuff, and he wanted to get rid of cannabis because hemp produces textiles, paper, and it was mainly about money and racism back then when it first started. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It was about money.
Right.
But
Yeah,
they
you're
couldn't
going
say it
way
was about
back.
money.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't sit there and say it's because of money. So if we make it a racial thing, then people will be really scared. So,
Right, yeah.
Yep. Jack,
Hold on,
go ahead.
guys.
And Tonya, we talked a little bit about this before we started the show, about the endocannabinoid system. Are you familiar with that, or what have you learned about it, and how would you explain that to some of your constituents?
It's a long word, endocannabinoid.
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 Cannabinoid.
They call it the ECS.
It's called the ECS.
Yeah,
How about that?
well, in your body, you have the receptors, and pain management is part of what cannabis helps with, the cannabis products, which is extracted from hemp. And so people need to learn more about it. I am not an expert on that. As people that I know that use the product on a regular basis, because I don't have any ailments. I don't take any medications for anything. So I've not had to use any cannabis products myself. I have purchased it before. I have an elderly family member. And I think some of your listening audience might relate to this. The great grandma or great aunt or elderly neighbor that has all these ailments that they complain about constantly, chronic complainers, and the ones that are never happy no matter what. And so this one family member in particular, rheumatoid arthritis and a whole bunch of other ailments. So I went to the local, is Hope Organics in Bedford, the local CBD store, and this was about a year ago, and it was a present, and to get her to try something different other than all the medications. And she tried it, and it was what I got was an ointment to rub in. It was an ointment, and she said she could feel the heat, and it actually helped a little bit, but the oil in the ointment caused residue to get on the clothing. So I gave her something new to complain about.
What a joy. What a joy. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing that I've been reading up on, because I'm dementia certified, and my father passed away. He got dementia. Well, he had early onset dementia for a number of years, and then he got to the point where he had to go into a nursing home. And I've been reading on, well, it's related to Alzheimer's too, where the frustration that people have with memory loss, and some of the agony and that sort of thing, that cannabis products can really help relieve some of that. So I'm reading more up on that now. Just started doing that and get more familiar with how some of the cannabis products can help with people who are going down that road.
Yeah, it also helped with sleeplessness, as far as like sundowning goes.
Yes,
That-
my father had sundowning. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Now, do you think that Indiana can or would legalize even if the federal government doesn't?
They will go on kicking and screaming. Indiana is one of the states that's last to do anything, even with modern technology. The East Coast and the West Coast are always the ahead, and then slowly gets to Indiana. I think Indiana was probably one of the last states to get an ATM machine. So we're we're always behind, and yeah, we're slow on every issue, technology as well as legalizing marijuana. I think was it 37 states now that legalized, and so it'll probably be 49 states legalizing marijuana before Indiana does.
Okay, so
You know that Mississippi and Alabama have legalized.
Yes.
That's a statement, isn't it?
We're behind
We're less progressive.
Mississippi.
We're less progressive than Mississippi and Alabama. Let that soak in.
I know, isn't that sad? That's sad. I know.
Man.
what do you think has to happen in order to change people in Indiana's like in office's mind as far as getting it legalized faster, or what do they need to see?
We the people, we need to get out there more and have people get on the horn to our legislators. And I think if I get elected to Congress, even though it's at the federal level, if they see someone going to Washington, D.C. that supports the legalization of marijuana, and I have a loud voice, when some of my friends will say I have a loud mouth, well, they're going to hear me coming. So yeah, I will be loud and proud. And I think the more legislators that are elected that do support the legalization of marijuana, I think that will trickle down to the local legislation at the state house in Indiana, especially when the majority of the people in Indiana favor the legalization of marijuana. And it's starting to become more popular to speak out about it. Usually people were hush behind the door. Yeah, I want it legalized, but they don't say it out loud. Well, now they're starting to talk about it. And I am so surprised that some of the people I talk to, even Christian conservatives, that'll be like, yeah, I actually think marijuana should be legalized. So I'm sorry, people are starting to come up to me now because I'm open about it. I wear my pin. So, I'm not hiding that. So when I'm talking to people one-on-one, they're starting to open up and say, yeah, me too. So it's starting to roll in the positive way. And by the way, that's my campaign. It's the Roll It Back campaign. It was the last time too. And that can have a dual meaning. We'll roll it back so people can roll it.
There we go. Good thinking. I like that.
Roll back the rules and regulations and give people back their freedoms and liberties. That's what I'm about.
That's
Nice.
right.
So you know there's a difference between alcohol intoxication and cannabis intoxication. Do you think most people in the government understand the difference?
I think so, which is why it passed the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. Because if you look at human behavior, not all, but most of the people, our legislators in Washington, D.C., went to college, they went to the frat houses, and they probably were getting high. They will never admit it, but I bet you they were. And they're probably thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind if that was legal. And then maybe I can be reminiscent of my college days. So it's more and more people are starting to, just by their own experiences, realizing that marijuana is pretty harmless. It really is.
Okay, Jack.
Okay. we talked about this a little bit. You know that cannabis is much safer than alcohol. What can we do to get people to realize that? One of the things that the state legislators always talk about is wanting to, have a test, like they have a test for alcohol intoxication, and what is the big danger of people driving and that kind of thing. And they don't understand the difference between alcohol and marijuana. So, can you elaborate on that? Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, well, ignorance is bliss, I guess. They need to be, yeah, they need to be educated. And I think, and I go back to we the people, we're starting to see a groundswell of voters who are starting to be more open about the legalization of marijuana and that it should happen. If that wasn't the case, it wouldn't have passed the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. And I think the problem isn't so much the people as it is the state of Indiana and the legislators that have been there for too long. Some of these people have just been in office way too long. They need to be voted out. We need to get some more common sense people elected to not just the state, but also to the United States House of Representatives as well. We need to stop the two-party system and get more libertarians and independents at the state house, not just Washington, D.C. So
you mentioned the MORE Act, and and it passed the House, but you know that every Indiana representative in the House voted against that.
Oh, not surprised at all.
Everyone.
Pretty much. Well, Indiana's a red state.
Really?
I think we have a couple of Democrats that are in the House, but it's mostly Republicans in Washington, D.C. And if you look at the voting scorecard, if you will, in Washington, D.C., it pretty much went down party lines. The majority in the House right now is Democrat, so that's why it passed. There was a few Republicans from across the country that came on board. But you're right, Indiana has a poor record in that regard, and the citizens need to go to the polls and vote.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Speaking of ignorance,
why do you excellent segue here?
Why do you think that there's so much resistance to cannabis legalization here in Indiana with all the information that's out there and that we know that it helps, and not only that, with the majority of Hoosiers wanting legalization?
Well, I can't get into the psyche of our representatives or get into their head, but it might be bigotry. I'm guessing it's not that they don't have the access to the information because it's out there. I think they just are turning a blind eye. They don't want to know. That's it. That's why they have to be voted out.
Do you think it could be also like campaign contributors that are lining their pockets to make them not want to?
No, I think it's more personal. I just think it's just something they don't want to do. And until they stop getting the money, but I just don't, it's up to the voters. It really is. We need to vote them out. And I'll just keep saying that. We the people need to vote them out.
I also feel like they're afraid to say they were wrong. And I mean, somebody has been in for so long, if they would have to backpedal and say, ooh, maybe I was mistaken. And I think a lot of them have too big of egos for that.
Right. Good point.
Good stopping point right now. Well, not stopping, pausing point. Sorry. We need to give a shout out to our hometown CBD in Plainfield. Please take a look at their commercial. We really appreciate them supporting us.
Hometown CBD in Plainfield with a great variety of Delta 8 and CBD edibles, Delta 8 THC cartridges, and CBD oils. Hometown CBD, your source for high-quality CBD products you can trust in the greater Plainfield area.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you for Hometown CBD and Plainfield for supporting us, as well as Indiana Normal's homepage. Tonya, we're going to jump back in, kind of get more on a couple federal questions here, since that's where you'll be more. This is kind of a long one. Stick with me. So 37 states, as you know, have opted out of the federal marijuana prohibition, legalization cannabis for medical or adult use. So as a result, there are now little more than 428,000 people working in the state regulated cannabis business across the US. So due to the conflict between the state and federal cannabis laws, there's workers under the constant threat of federal prosecution just for having a job and trying to make a living. And also the lack of access to banking services puts their safety and the safety of others at risk, since it's an all cash business. So what would you do as a congresswoman to protect these workers and resolve the conflict between the state and federal cannabis laws as soon as possible?
Okay. I'm a constitutionalist, so that puts me kind of in a quandary on that, and let me explain. Because I do think marijuana should be legal in all 50 states, and if it's legal at the federal level, that will help influence the states. But under the Constitution, we have Article 4, which talks about states' rights, as well as the 10th Amendment, which also does that, which is one of the reasons why Indiana is slow, because they are exercising their constitutional right to be a independent state, even though it's within our union. So that's kind of a quandary there, where we, as legislators, you don't want to put the boot down on states without doing something that's unconstitutional. So I do think that Indiana needs to, get in the game, and I think they will, and I think the voters will vote out these politicians at the state house who are slow to react, or because, like you said earlier, their egos are preventing them from doing that. They just need to put their big boy pants on and say, hey, I've evolved and I'm ready to vote to legalize marijuana. But I'm always against, because I don't like all the rules and regulations at the federal level, but I also don't like it when the feds strong arm the states. So it's a kind of a balancing act, but I think we're going to get it worked out. I think marijuana will eventually be legal in Indiana, and I'm hopeful this summer it passes at the federal level, which will help influence that. And then as far as the banking and the money, that all falls into place along with that. It's a process. And I don't want to say people need to be patient, because they've been patient too long. We're so far behind. It's ridiculous. So yeah.
So if it does become legal federally, say this summer, how soon do you think that these people will be able to take these bundles and bundles of cash and get them into the bank and actually get a car loan, get a mortgage, prove that they have income, because they can't do that now?
Are you talking about in the state of Indiana?
No, just federally. Say the 428,000 employees throughout the country that work in all cash business.
Well, that's a good question. I'd like to abolish the IRS as well. So yeah, when you're talking about money and people going to the banks, I don't know why that should even be a problem. I don't understand why they're making it so hard. So yeah, I would definitely be in favor of sponsoring and co-sponsoring bills that would make it easier for people that have the cash. Because right now, I know, because I'm in the mortgage real estate business, and they get mortgages. So, and if we have to go to closings, and if someone has more than $10,000, they have to wire it through the banks. They're not allowed to bring a cashier's check or cash if it's more than $10,000, because the federal government wants to know, where did you get that money? Right. So we do need to get a handle on that, and really mind your own business.
Well, and that's the hard part. If it's more than 10,000, they have to fill out that tax form. And if they put on there
Yep.
that they work in the drug industry, the banks won't take the money. So here they have more than enough to buy a house or whatever, but they can't.
Yeah, and
So,
and there again, those are rules and regulations that need to be rolled back. And there I go again, roll it back.
right.
You know, we need to roll it back. So
Right.
that's more of the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, people go to my website, TonyaForCongress.com. You know, show me some love there, and I will do what I can to roll back all these rules and regulations that is stymieing people's freedom. You should be able to spend your money. If you're making money and you're making a good living, you should be able to spend your money and be able to go to any bank. Yeah, so we do need to roll back the rules and regulations on that.
Awesome. Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, do you think that the tobacco lobby is pressuring to keep cannabis illegal?
I hadn't heard that because it's a completely different product. I will say I am concerned about the taxes. In the MORE Act, it does authorize for the future sales tax. And I do not want to see there a piling on of when marijuana is legal in the state of Indiana or in any other state, a piling on of taxes. Like here in Indiana, now I'm a non-smoker, but I think it's like $4 for a pack of cigarettes plus $4 taxes. So people are paying like something like $7 for a pack of cigarettes, and most, you know, more than half of that is taxes, I believe, or something along that line. So as a future congresswoman, I would definitely not vote for increased taxes. In fact, I would want to roll it back, and also some of the rules and regulations that are in the current bill, I would want to roll those back as well. But right now we have to get the MORE Act passed to make it legal, because most of the people would rather pay tax on purchasing marijuana legally than go to jail for the same purchase. And you lose their car and that sort of thing. So people would say, yeah, I wouldn't mind paying a tax on marijuana, but it can't be exorbitant. We can't have the piling on of taxes and rules and regulations on cannabis products either. So that's what I would be working for and fighting for on that when I go to Congress.
Well,
And that's
speaking
so
of,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so true, because I know there's some states out there right now, Illinois being one of them. God bless them that they're legal, but their taxes are so high. If it becomes federally legal and you start adding federal taxes on top of that, it's going to drive it back into the underground.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And as a libertarian and a constitutionalist, I am for low taxes and getting rid of the rules and regulations, or at least rolling back some of them. So yeah.
well, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if you believe what I believe, but I think it's more of like the judicial system. You know, speaking of asset forfeiture or whatever, I can't say it right. And privatized prisons making so much money off of, they know that they can arrest 15,000 people for just a joint, whereas murderers and, violent crimes are only getting, say, 100 or 200 a month or a day, you know what I mean, compared to thousands of cannabis users. Do you think they have more of an incentive to try to keep it illegal?
They may, but they're not the majority. So the people who have a voice, the people need to get out there. Some of these people that run the prisons, they're a handful. They don't have the numbers to actually go to the polls. So I keep saying that over again. We need to get the voters out there to get these people out of office that are stymieing our freedoms and liberties, and get marijuana legalized in the state of Indiana. So yeah, that's where I'm at on that.
Okay, Jack, you have one?
Okay, when marijuana does become legal here in Indiana, how can we stop large corporations from monopolizing the industry?
There again, because we have wealthy politicians who make these rules and regulations and put all these red tape laws in there to make it hard for the small farmer, and you have these big corporations who can afford to hire accountants and lawyers and this and that to do all the paperwork for them. It's not a free market like it should be, because I am a free market person, and it should be fair across the board for everyone. If you have a 30-acre farm, family farm, you shouldn't be hindered and burdened with all the paperwork and licenses and this and that and the other that the big corporations can handle. So we need to roll those back as well. Those rules and regulations and the required paperwork needs to be streamlined so that the little guy can have his little farm and make some money.
But do you think, but on the other hand too, that if you don't have regulations when it comes into effect, you're going to have large corporations using their money in the fair market system, free market system, to quash the small people and take over. If on the other hand, you allow some sensible regulation, like through a cannabis commission, okay, that would mandate certain percentage of the licenses or whatever go to minorities or small businesses. So that's where regulations are a good thing.
Jack, you are so right. I did not mean to say to get rid of all rules and regulations. We do have to have some, we do have to have some form of law. We can't have, the wild west and it be like a free for all. So yes, there does have to be some common sense laws, but not so much that it's restrictive on the small farmer.
A good thing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm up in the rural area, so I do like to hear that. So with you being a libertarian, would you be able to work with the Republicans, the Democrats, the few Greens that are out there to advance cannabis legalization?
Oh, absolutely. I would be working for the people in my district, a voice for the people. So I don't care what's behind your name, RDL. If you're on board with what's right for the people, then I can work with you. Yeah, I'm not, I want to say a party loyalist. No, I'm not.
That's unique. That's unique for a politician to say. So.
Definitely. Brian?
Yeah. What's your opinion on if a lower age limit was set, such as 18, if that would be imposed? Instead of 21.
Okay. And I've talked about this actually on the campaign trail, because this last election cycle, they passed at the federal level that you had to be 21 years old for tobacco. And I was real upset about that, because we have guys, men and women, but they go overseas, 18, 19, 20 years old,
Right.
fighting for their countries, having a machine gun or whatever weapon it is they use. Then they come back home and they can't have a celebratory cigar on the back porch with grandpa because it's illegal, because they're not 21. I don't agree with that at all. And marijuana, it should be 18 for cigarettes as well as marijuana. That's me. That's my opinion.
What about for medical reasons? Let's say a doctor, you have a child that has epilepsy or cancer, or any numerous reasons, honestly, that a doctor says that cannabis will help with this issue. Do you support that? Yes.
If you have a prescription from a doctor for a medical reason, and there's so many children that would benefit, and we all know this. Yeah. So absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Good.
So, Tonya, what's your plan to ensure that women, minorities, people of color who've suffered greatly under prohibition have a fair shot at getting opportunities in the industry? Such as, you look up in Michigan, sometimes their licensing fees can be like $50,000 or more. Someone that has a record for drugs or marijuana, they're not going to be able to come up with that money. What is your plan to help them?
Okay, well, under the MORE Act, anyone who has a record for marijuana, as long as it's a nonviolent offense, their record would be expunged. So they wouldn't have that on their record anymore if the MORE Act is passed. So that part shouldn't be an issue. There shouldn't be a high fees for anybody. And I don't know if you're talking about local or national, federal level fees. And so that's where the voters need to get in there and get people in there to roll back the rules and regulations and the fees. And I would be for that as well, reducing that. But the MORE Act does, well, that's what it's called. It's called the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, to expunge the record of people who have been arrested in the past for having a joint in their car or whatever. That those records would be expunged. So they won't, so they wouldn't, when they're going, that wouldn't prohibit them from getting what they need.
Now, is that going to be an automatic expungement, or is that going to be more of, because I know usually you can't just walk in and say, hey, I want it expunged. You have to hire a lawyer, have them do the paperwork, sent through the courts. And, and any lawyer is going to charge anywhere from $500 to $2,500 for that. Do you know if it's going to be an automatic?
It's my understanding that it will be an automatic. I don't think anybody has to hire a lawyer to get their record expunged when the MORE Act says it's expunged. There's going to have to be a process, of course. And there's still details to be worked out. The MORE Act is new. It's at the Senate now, and they're still going back and forth and amending it and tweaking it. So yeah, and if we come across hardships or burdens on people after the MORE Act, we can go back and amend and adjust and make changes to make it better for, like you mentioned, if that ended up being a problem, well, we have ways to fix that. So when things come up, because there's going to be stuff comes up that we didn't think about, that after the MORE Act's passed, it's like, oh, we didn't know that this was going to affect this or that was going to be effective. So we need to, do more amendments and that sort of thing. And it'll happen. It'll happen. We just got to get it legalized first, and then we can, tweak the little, it's not going to be perfect right off the get-go. It's not going to be perfect.
Right. Well, thank you for being honest about it. And
well, it is what it is, and we have to, it's baby steps. Right. Like I said, 2 years ago, people didn't even think it was going to pass the House, and it did. So now that it's passed the House, it's going to the Senate. It's baby steps. So we're getting there. We're moving forward. We have to not give up. We have to stay in the fight and make improvements where they need to be. It's not going to be a glorious thing for everybody at every corner, but it is going to help, and we're moving in the right direction. So we just got to hang in there and keep going. So
that makes sense. That makes sense. Jack?
Yeah. So what kind of federal taxing plan do you envision?
Actually, hit the ramp about that slow and then started speeding up.
Tonya? Tanya's frozen up.
Uh-oh.
Give it a second, see if she's coming back.
Right.
Tonya, come back.
Come back to us.
Come back, Tonya, come back. There's something on chat. That's it.
I don't know if she's going to make it back. Well, does she know she's frozen?
Let's see.
Oh, she left. We're going to go ahead and we're going to give it a quick second to see if she can log back on real quick. Right. So we'll take this opportunity to kind of talk between us. We have some great advocates here with us. What do you guys think that taxes should be like? Where do you think, Jack, where do you think marijuana taxes should go?
We should go in terms of where the revenue is generated, or what percentage of taxes should there be?
Where the revenue should go.
Yeah, there's a number of different things. First of all, and we've talked to candidates that have mentioned a lot of different issues.
Oh, all over.
Infrastructure is one that comes up a lot. And I know down in Michigan, each one of the 100 counties and local governments throughout Michigan is getting like $10 million. Right? It's insane the amount of money and it's earmarked for infrastructure. So that I think is huge. So that seems to be bipartisan. Everybody needs roads and airports and sidewalks and everything else.
That makes sense. Brian.
Another thing,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
another thing that comes up a lot is the education. Everybody wants to fund education more adequately. So that's a good thing. I think on the federal level too, they also had something that there was going to devote some taxes to mental health. Okay. Those people are adversely affected by cannabis, and there's a very small percentage of that are. Okay. To aid them and also aid other mental health efforts for addiction. So I think that's
We have heard a few candidates mention mental health. Brian, Indiana just hit the lottery. It's finally legal. We have all this cash rolling in. Where would you want to see it go?
Well, I'm passionate about cannabis helping with addiction. You know, I've experienced that. I know all of us have experienced it in one way or another, sadly. I would like to see it go towards, like Jack was talking about, mental health, education, and to get more addiction centers out there to where we can help the people that are addicted to heroin, opiates, pharmaceuticals, or
legal drugs,
all that stuff that need to get off of that and actually use cannabis as an exit drug to it. I also believe that our schools should be invested in highly. We should not be letting our kids go without in schools at all, and like infrastructure, roadways, housing for homeless, ways to help, better ways to help the homeless get out of the predicament that they're in, which includes all the jobs that would come from cannabis legalization. Like people, it's hard for people it seems like to put one and one together and understand that it makes two. You know what I mean? They're like, well, if this is legal, this is going to happen. Like, yeah, but if it's legal, all this money is going to come in, which is going to help these people and is going to help our great state of Indiana,
Well, and I think if, like you said, if we could address the mental health issue and really bring it to the forefront, put a bunch of money in it, you'll see the homeless population get help just that way, because that's such a huge problem with the homeless population. It's not just here, take a house. They have such mental health issues that it's not just about handing them keys to a home. So that's great you brought that up, Brian. Thank you very much. That's really, and the addiction centers. Indiana sucks at having addiction centers. Like up here in Northeast Indiana, I think we have one. I mean, you look down in Florida where the opioid crisis is huge. They have tons of recovery facilities. I mean, they're just a dime a dozen. Indiana doesn't have many. If we could get some recovery, use cannabis as an exit drug, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Well, it doesn't look like Tonya's going to be able to log back on. Sorry we lost you and we couldn't get some closing statements from her. But everyone, thank you again so much for joining us. And again, get out and vote between now and Tuesday. Do your homework. Don't vote a party. Vote a candidate and get out and vote. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.